So sometimes telling a story in an image is kind of hard, and sometimes it's easy. Now, there's other times when you have to create those elements in your photo because they don't exist, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. So let's jump into the computer and take a look. So here we are inside of On1 Photo Raw, and you can see that I have the final image in front of us. Now, let me show you what we went from and how we got to where we are today, or at least at this moment. So if I turn this layer off, you can see this is the base image, straight out of camera with maybe very minimal edits. And then we went ahead and turned the image into this. It looks like an overcast, rainy type of day or foggy, and it helps with telling the story about this person walking down the street in a relatively vibrant jacket. All right, so we're going to go ahead and unpack all of the edits. So I'm just going to reset the image and then kind of walk you through what I was thinking as I was creating this particular image in the moment. All right, give me a second. All right, so I have the image completely reset. I saved all of the settings just so that way I can go ahead and activate them and talk you through the idea. So the first thing that I noticed, and it really starts with the point of capture. This is in New York, and we were on this side street. It was foggy outside, or misty, I should say, because it was overcast and it had rained already. But none of that is really coming through in this particular capture, other than the fact that the person's wearing a coat with a hood. That's the only way that the story is really being told. So I wanted to go ahead and kind of hone in on that. Now, I went ahead and used the generative eraser to reduce the nuance of these cars because I felt like these cars were distracting over here on this side, and I used a generative eraser just because I felt that that was the tool that I wanted. All right, and that's what gets us to this point over here. So the generative eraser, I'll zoom out, and if you hadn't known, or if you didn't know that those cars were there, then you wouldn't even have seen what that looks like. But it's okay because I kind of worked through this. All right. Now, the next step was I went ahead and I activated Bruance AI, which is already on. So I have Bruance AI turned on, but it's a really low value. And I do that because I like to build up my own, I guess, tension in an image. But I like using Bruance AI to help me kind of properly expose the image, if that's the best way of saying that. I don't think it is, but that's what I use it for, is to get a good look, a base look on my photo. So the next step here was inside of the local adjustment, and this is kind of where the photo started to take shape. So the very first thing I had to work with was that very non-aesthetically pleasing area over here on the left side of the image. So if I go ahead and activate this left side dark, and look, I actually renamed my layers this time. So kudos to me. But now that I've went ahead and darkened this left side, so if I hit the letter O, it's just a gradient mask kind of fading over the image there. Nothing to write home about, but it helps with focusing on the main subject, which if it's not clear already, hopefully by the end of the photo, it is clear, but it's this person with the pink coat on, all right, walking down the street. And it's kind of mysterious because you're looking at the back of a person. And I think that this is what makes this particular image fun. I seen the person coming down with this pink coat, and I seen the wall because I was standing next to it and said, you know what? Getting this person up against the wall, or, you know, kind of contrasting off the wall, it would make sense. So that's the reason why I went ahead and framed this shot up the way that I did. It was intentional. But the second thing here is a Bruance AI people mask. So let me go ahead and turn that on, and then we'll click on the mask and take a look at it. And you can see it's just selecting the people in the frame. There's this big blob right here in the middle. That's obviously our main subject. And then there's a person kind of in front of our main subject. And then it also picked up that there's a person on a bike in here. And I like the bike because it gives a little bit of movement and it helps tell the story that this city, it's in a city. You can already get that feel from the overall environment looking at the structures. But you can also see that because this person on the bike is in there, it gives the shot a little bit of movement and action, as well as the foot being up, showing that this person is in motion. So that's, more photography tips, if you will, than it is photo editing, but it does all help tell the story. And that's the reason why I really enjoy editing this particular image. And then, of course, I love that I got these pigeons up here. I didn't notice this until I started editing, so that wasn't intentional. And I was like, you know what? That's actually kind of cool that there's some pigeons in there. But I digress. So now it's time to really start to shape the overall story. And all of this was edited in On1, by the way. So I didn't do anything in any third-party application, all On1. So I'm going to click on effects, and you can see I have quite a few effects lined up in here. So we'll get going. The first one was a Bleach Bypass, and that's just to help me get that contrasty look. Because this was a overcast day, it was rainy, I wanted to kind of play on that. This is also New York City, and there's a level of grittiness to the city, and it's a city, and it's street photography. So to me, Bleach Bypass just made sense. I didn't do much with it other than activate it and then just pull down on the amount so it wasn't so strong. And that's all that I did with the Bleach Bypass. Then I went ahead and threw a tone enhancer on here. But the tone enhancer, you'll notice, let me just scroll down here. The tone enhancer, and I'm just going to minimize all this. The tone enhancer is just using the curves module. Now, the reason I work inside of the curves module and I kind of do like this exaggerated fade inside of the tone module, or tone filter, I should say, is because sometimes I like to play with the detail and the clarity slider, and I like to combine this look with these two tools here to kind of give me a different feel for the overall image. I didn't know if I wanted to go soft focus, which is where I would just pull back on the detail a little bit, and that kind of softens up the image and it makes it look a little bit more dreamy like. But I was thinking, that isn't really filling, or I'm not filling that for this particular image, which is why I just went ahead and left this to 0 because I wanted more defined edges, and I was already getting enough of the fade here. But I don't believe I did anything in any of these other channels. So that's the reason why I use the tone enhancer. So if you're not familiar with the curves module, or On1, it does have the tone enhancer, and there's a hidden curves filter inside of the tone enhancer. Lots of fun to use. But you also have the dedicated curves filter, which is right here. And that one just doesn't come with the detail or the clarity slider that I like to kind of mix in with my curve. So that's the reason why I use this particular filter when I want to do a look like this. But after playing around with it and experimenting, I didn't really like what I was getting, so I let it go. Next, we have a split tone. And for me, what I wanted to do was really sell the idea of a color scheme. All right. So looking at the pink coat here, I said, okay, what do I want to put in the highlights? And let me just go ahead and open this up, and you'll see what's happening here. So I went with kind of a triadic color scheme. And if you're not familiar with color theory, triadic just really means that you're pulling 3 colors off of the color scheme or color wheel, and you're kind of trying to push everything in that general direction. And the split tone filter really helps out with this because if my primary color here is pink, and that falls in this area, I knew that I wanted to put something over here in the kind of golden look to warm things up a little bit, and that's going to go in the highlights. So by default, that puts my third look opposite of this golden look. Now, again, this is color theory, and I am no super genius at color theory. I just like to dabble in it because I experiment, like I explained so many times on this channel. But that's essentially how I ended up with the colors that I have. So we have this oatmeal golden brownish looking color, which I think works really well for the image. And then of course we have blue, which if you remembered where that golden looking color was, it was up here on the top portion in the yellow. And if you go directly opposite on the color wheel, that's called a complementary color. And I know that my coat is going to be somewhere in this area, and that's kind of how I was making my triad. It's not a perfect triad for all of my color enthusiasts out there that know way more about color theory than I do. This just works out on the image, and that's why I went with it. All right. So by cooling down the shadows, though, it really does help this image look a little bit darker, and it plays more into that bleach bypass look overall. All right. So that's all that's really happening here. And I went ahead and balanced this more towards the highlights, so it's a little bit brighter. And you can kind of see that golden brown or that golden color kind of shining through, or kind of peeking through here on the wall. It's in the ground here, the pavement. So that's another reason why I chose this color. It just worked well. You have the yellow trucks. So there's like these highlights or accents, and it just works so well in my opinion. And then I also like what it did up here in the sky. So that's the reason why I went that direction with the split tone. It's just a really fun way of injecting a little bit of color into the image. Then we have the dynamic contrast. So let me go ahead and turn that on, and I'll turn it on and turn it off. It's very, very subtle. It's probably not even going to come through with the YouTube compression. But if you look right down here in the concrete area, it's just bringing everything a little bit more refined together, giving the perception of sharpness, which I do enjoy, because again, I didn't go with the minus detail in order to kind of defocus the image. I left it at neutral, and I realized like, hey, this needs some contrast. And so I went ahead and threw that over the entire image. I think that it works for this particular photo. It also helps with defining the highlighted areas on the main subject's bag, as well as this rim light that's coming again from the diffuse sky. So those are kind of the details that I was looking at when I added in the dynamic contrast. So that's kind of my thought process with that. And I think I just used the normal. I don't think I did much of anything with this. Let me see, styles. I don't know. I think I'm pretty confident I used a preset, and it was just one of the built-in presets with On One. Now, where this whole image, at least for me, kind of started to come together, or came together, or at least at this point, I was feeling like, hey, I'm missing the weather dimension, the fog that I could see in the upper atmosphere, because the buildings, like even this building right here, further up in the frame or in the sky, it was actually covered by fog, so you couldn't see the top of the building. But I couldn't see, it wasn't showing up in the image, and so I wanted to highlight that right here in the image. So that's where the weather comes in, and if I turn that on, it just kind of fades in very, very faintly. Now, I did use a depth mask to put this into the image. So if I hit the letter O, and I'm not on that mask, so let me click that mask real quick. Now if I hit the letter O, we can see that mask. All right, so anything that's white is where the fog is going to appear, and anything that's black is where it's not going to appear. And anything that's gray, it's going to kind of appear in the image. And what I love about this is you can see it's not anywhere at the bottom or on this right side. So it's kind of like a L shape, or a reverse L, I should say. And then it barely goes over our main subject, a little bit over the main subject, because I think that helps with telling the story. But then it goes even further into the image, and you start to see this fog a little bit further away, and it's just helping with bringing this whole story to life. I think without the fog, it just doesn't look that good, at least in my opinion, which is the reason why I went with it. And I think that it just helps tell the story of why this person would be wearing a coat. And I like that I can't see any faces in this image. There's just so many things as I just examine this photo. But all in all, that is the photo. So here is the beginning image, and then here is the final image. And I could probably stand to darken this side down just a little bit more, but I'm not overly concerned about what's going on over here, because it kind of blends in with what would be in a city. If you didn't know that there were cars there, you wouldn't have been able to see that. But now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. So I'm sure someone's going to make a comment about the cars and the generative erase. But honestly, you wouldn't have known that if I had just put this photo up. You'd be like, oh, okay. Because all of the focus and attention goes right here. And it goes right here because I maintained the colors, and I was intentional about making sure that the subject actually popped in this particular photo. So hopefully you found some value in learning, kind of my thought process for editing an image like this. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, or maybe your concepts of how you like to approach editing down in the description. Don't put it in the description box, in the comment section. All right. That's where comments go, and where I would love to hear what your thoughts are about editing photos and getting your street images. Like, how do you tell stories? Do you look for stories? Or what is it that drives you if you are into street photography, which I can't say that I'm necessarily into it. I respect the genre. I was just having fun while I was out at the Build Expo last week in New York City. So with that being said, if you want to learn more about On1 Photo Raw, go ahead and click the video that's popping up now. If you want to save some money, right now On1 is having a great sale throughout the month of June to celebrate their anniversary. And if you want to help support this channel, consider using the affiliate link in the description box below. I make a small commission, but that's at no extra charge to you. And until the next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.